Hello everybody and welcome to Gilat's webinar series. I am Dorit Oren, Director of Product Marketing at Gilat Satellite Networks. As many of you know, Gilat is a leading global provider of products and services for satellite-based broadband communications. Gilat is in this business for over 25 years with over 1 million terminals shipped to more than 90 countries. And Gilat has over 20 sales offices throughout the world. In today's webinar, we will focus on one of Gilat's strongest areas, which is cellular backhauling. I'm excited to present today's webinar topic, Staying Ahead of the Cellular Data Traffic Surge. I have also subtitled the webinar, Can You Believe 100 megabits per second single session download to an LTE handset? I'd like to recommend that you stay tuned to hear more about this remarkable achievement. In this webinar today, I'm pleased to be hosting Jose Del Rosario, Research Director Manila, who is with Northern Sky Research, known also as NSR. NSR is a global market research company focusing on analysis and growth in areas such as satellite communications. Please bear with me for a few procedural issues before we get started. If you would like to ask questions during the webinar, please type them into the chat box. We will take as many questions as time permits at the end of the presentation. If there are questions, however, that we don't get to during this session, we will make sure to get back to you later. Please don't be concerned in case you miss something. The webinar is being recorded and will be available on Gilat's website for further review soon after the webinar. Okay, so let's go over the agenda of today's webinar. We'll start with Mr. Del Rosario, who will review the new market trends which are driving tremendous growth and that are providing mobile network operators with exciting new opportunities. He will then share market research supporting the rapid migration to 3G and LTE networks, and Mr. Del Rosario will conclude with discussing the backhaul challenges. Then I will proceed to discuss how these challenges can be overcome. Specifically, I will explain how with innovative technology, the challenges of performance and cost, both OPEX and CAPEX, can be overcome. And after that, I will sum up and go through 2 field-proven solutions to make the point even stronger. So moving along, let's get started. I have the honor to present Jose Del Rosario, NSR's Research Director.
Thank you, Ms. Oren. For our presentation on NSR today, we will be discussing new market trends that are driving growth and new opportunities going forward, and basically looking at the wireless requirements that we see today, and more importantly, the requirements evolving in the future. On this slide, we have data from Ericsson, and they have tracked traffic since 2010. And we see that voice traffic has remained steady, but in the data segment, this has really exploded. 65% growth in data traffic between the first quarter of 2013 and just 1 year later, the first quarter of 2014. Going forward, Ericsson is forecasting through 2019, or just 4 to 5 short years away, 9.2 billion mobile subscriptions by the end of 2019. The more interesting statistic of that is that greater than 80% of mobile subscriptions are going to be mobile broadband. So basically, mobile data has exploded over the last 4 years, and Ericsson is projecting that mobile broadband will dominate subscriptions in 4 to 5 years. So basically, the bottom line is we need higher bandwidth support in terrestrial as well as satellite platforms. On the next slide, we look at the migration in terms of 2G to 2.5G to 3G and in the form factor segment. Once again, Ericsson is forecasting that by the end of 2019, of all subscriptions in the globe, 2.6 billion will be LTE subscriptions. Cisco, at the bottom of the slide, is also forecasting that smartphones will experience phenomenal growth. From today's 25% installed base, Cisco is forecasting in their VMI report that by 2018, or 3 to 4 short years away, 39% of all form factors will be smartphones. So basically, 2.5G will give way to 3G, 4G, and then the form factor segment will once again require higher bandwidth support. So the question for us is, how will satellite play in the 3G and 4G market? The next slide, our answer is that HTS, or high throughput satellites, will be part of that solution or part of the ecosystem, and HTS, or high throughput satellites, really is a capacity and cost structure that supports wireless data. We have tracked the announcements for high throughput satellite programs, including EPIC NG, EOSat, Inmarsat Global Express, IP Star, etc. And year by year, we've been adjusting our capacity forecast due to new announcements. For instance, in the last 2 years of research, we have upped our capacity comparison by 500 gigabits per second, and this does not even include the programs being vetted right now by Google and Facebook. If or when Google or Facebook do deploy their programs, then this capacity will increase even higher. So coupled with the potential of oversupply of HTS and declining cost structures, we believe that this will be a key trend affecting the wireless backhaul solution mix, and that's a positive trend. On the next slide, when looking at what's driving market growth going forward, again, Cisco, in terms of their projections in 3 to 4 years, are seeing that mobile video will be the application going forward. And when we say mobile video, this is really data streaming. So in terms of where that traffic is going, mobile video in Cisco's view will generate or account for close to 70% of all mobile traffic by the year 2018. So this is the main driving market growth segment going forward. And in terms of measurements, the measurements in terms of traffic is in the exabytes per month. It's not the megabits per second or gigabits per second or even terabits per second that the satellite industry is used to. We are looking at exabytes per month. So on the next slide, we then take a look at the addressable market of satellites today and where we see that going forward. New technologies are enabling viable business cases. There are new revenue sharing models that are being implemented and going to be vetted in the future. And we also have government-driven universal service obligations and universal service funds that will be part of the demand mix. So in the past and up to today, satellites have been perfect for rural communities, remote enterprises, isolated resorts, mining and plantation sites that are in remote locations, oil and gas rigs where terrestrial technologies can never reach. But with the migration from 2G, 2.5G to 3G, 4G platforms, the fat pipes that are going to be required by smartphones, laptops, iPads, etc., and the video traffic that Cisco is forecasting, we believe that the market will be enlarged for satellites to include suburban communities, cellular on wheels, and disaster recovery. I'm based in Manila, the Philippines, and we had a big storm in 2013, Typhoon Hainan. And once the networks went down, all the satellite companies came here and service was up and running within a day. So on the next slide, when we look at this enlarged addressable market and the trends of fat pipes and video going forward, what then is the backhaul challenge? For NSR at least, we believe it's the total cost of ownership. And on the next slide, we look at some of the options and solutions that do address that challenge. Satellite, of course, as mentioned earlier, is the only option in remote areas. It also has a very distinct feature of fast to deploy. It is indeed the fastest. When we look at installing networks the size of 50 sites to even 100 sites, this can be accomplished within months or maximum a year. We compare that with reliability issues as well, and there's been talk that, the latency, etc. But on the record today, satellites are highly reliable at 99.999% minimum. We compared that with the next option, which are microwave links, and Microwave needs clear line of sight. You have to negotiate through large land masses to install large networks. You have to install very expensive towers in a large footprint. So basically, you need high capital expenditure, lengthy and complex deployments compared to the satellite option. Terrestrial links are the final option, and here we're looking at DSL lines, fiber optics, and lease lines. Now, admittedly, working for the satellite industry in terms of capability, fiber optics really are massive. However, no one will deploy fiber optic lines if the return on investment isn't there. Telcos will not deploy fiber optics in remote locations because it's difficult. One, second, the ROI justification isn't there. So these terrestrial backhaul links are available when the infrastructure permits, and when we look at fiber, it's really on the coastal areas and it's really on fiber rings of urban areas. And at times, and most often, it's unfeasible due to cost. So on the next slide, we look at where we believe satellites would be in the overall landscape of 3G and 4G. And in our view, we do believe that over time, looking at the start, that there will be a transition from 2.5 and 2G to 3G and 4G platforms. BTS sites will move to these platforms, and they will be enabled, as I mentioned earlier, to GeoHTS that will dominate the install base. Looking at this picture a little bit differently on the next slide, in 2013, we estimated that the bulk of satellite-based BTS sites were on 2G and 2.5G services. Moving 10 years later, we believe that the complete opposite will take place, where the predominant platform will be 3G and 4G, accounting for about 83%. But how does this happen? How does the satellite BTS wireless backhaul landscape take place where it's a 3G, 4G platform? As noted earlier, we believe that the space segment cost will contribute to that, where OPEX will come down because of HTS. But equipment cost, or CAPEX, will decline as well. And this is where Gilat and other companies are working within the ecosystem to solve this issue. On the next slide, looking at the equipment options available in the marketplace today, and this includes Gilat's platforms and products. Macro cells, small cells, picocells, and femtocells will be part of the solution mix, either as standalone solutions or complementary. In NSR's view, at least, we believe that small cells or picocells are expected to outnumber macrocell sites, again, to be implemented in underserved and rural implementations, but also in enlarged markets such as urban areas, cellular on wheels, and emergency communications. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Ms. Oren, and believe she will talk about the equipment options as outlined in this slide. So I thank you, and then we have to field some questions later on. Ms. Oren?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Del Rosario, for a most interesting market review. Please do stay with us until the end, as we will take some questions from the attendees. Let's move on now to overcoming the LTE performance challenge. This is the most critical challenge which has to be overcome for satellite backhaul to be effective for high-throughput networks. See here the chart in front of you. See the huge performance leap in 4G networks. This is to maximum throughput speeds of 200 megabits per second. The performance challenge is really unprecedented. The requirement for high-throughput broadband is simply skyrocketed. And of course, this in turn requires VSATs that can support the full capability of LTE handheld devices. So to answer this need, Gilat has introduced CellEdge 2C Capricorn. This is a TDMA VSAT that reaches the record-breaking speed of 200 megabits per second. Gilat has managed to overcome this huge challenge by implementing encrypted and accelerated performance. Note that this acceleration is a must because of the combination of the cellular design and the inherent satellite delay. I recommend that you stay tuned until the end of the webinar to hear about this successful demonstration that we did. In this slide, I have put together a graphic to further explain the need for TCP acceleration. Acceleration is necessary in order to achieve the required user experience when a satellite backhaul is used. So let's look at this very busy slide slowly. See first on the bottom left. Here we have an image portraying a terrestrial backhaul of an LTE network. Here in the terrestrial world, the maximum handheld device performance of 100 megabits per second can be met. Now look at the middle image. You can see the same LTE network, this time with a satellite backhaul. When a typical modem, though, is used, not a Gilat modem, the speed is significantly reduced. Often only 2 megabits per second per download is achieved out of the 100 megabits per second full handset potential. This, of course, is not acceptable. See here the top right image, again with a satellite backhaul, but this time with Gilat's Capricorn VSAT. Here I am showing that Capricorn, the VSAT introduced by Gilat, achieves terrestrial performance due to the acceleration techniques that I will mention later in more detail. This is the unbelievably remarkable result of 100 megabits per second in a single session that I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. Towards the end of the webinar, as I just said, I'll share with you the actual field demonstration performed in Asia to prove this point. Okay, so we've addressed the performance challenge. What about the operating expenditures that were mentioned and definitely need to be addressed? Can the OPEX challenge be overcome? This question needs to be considered when satellite backhauling is to be used for 3G LTE networks. Clearly, high throughput satellites are reducing costs, as we heard earlier from Mr. Del Rosario. We see this here as well in this recent chart from ComSys. The chart speaks for itself on the fantastic increase in capacity expected and therefore cost reduction. However, in addition to high throughput satellites, the backhauling method must be considered. When providing a satellite backhaul, the question of bandwidth efficiency is very important. The goal is to save money by using the smallest amount of bandwidth or space segment that will of course meet the subscriber's performance needs. Now please bear with me as I translate this goal that I just mentioned into a technical question. And the technical question then would be, which access scheme is the best fit for both the download direction as well as the upload direction? Now to answer this, the suitable access scheme really depends on several parameters. The application, whether it's primarily voice or data, and we are clearly seeing the fantastic growth in the data trend. The second point to be considered is the cell activity, how busy it is. And the third one, of course, is the network size. Now, in a previous webinar, we went into detail about each of the access schemes, and we won't go into such detail this time. However, I will suffice by highlighting a few points that you see here in front of you. In the first option on the left, SEPC is being used in both the download and upload direction. This is usually appropriate when network traffic is continuous. In the second option in the middle of TDM SEPC, using TDM in the download direction saves costs. However, the upload direction of SEPC is still expensive. Now let's turn to the third option on the right-hand side of TDM-TDMA. Here TDM is used for download, and the difference is that TDMA is used for upload. In this access scheme, the maximum cost saving is provided. However, as I said, the best access scheme depends on several parameters, not only on this issue that I'm talking about now. And for GSM networks, all may be suitable. However, this is not the case for 3G LTE networks. To determine the best access scheme for 3G LTE networks, we must look at the traffic profile. So let's look at this diagram in front of you. here on slide 21. The traffic pattern is quite different than GSM networks. The shift to primarily data traffic on 3G LTE networks is exhibiting highly bursty traffic, as you see here in this diagram. Note the two dotted light blue lines. They are demonstrating a very high peak to average ratio. Again, in this illustration diagram, I have added another line, a gray line, to demonstrate the SCPC fixed speed access scheme. Now, when the traffic is bursty with a high peak to average ratio, this SCPC fixed speed has two issues. The first problem is SCPC doesn't meet peak traffic demand. You should be seeing on the slide now the peak red areas in the diagram. And the second issue is that this fixed SCPC capacity wastes satellite bandwidth for average demand. See now the red area below the SCPC fixed line. So on the next slide, we can clearly conclude that in order to achieve the full 3G LTE network potential, the TDM-TDMA access scheme is required. SCPC is not economically feasible for high-speed networks. So let's sum up this point of overcoming the OPEX challenge. First, as was mentioned earlier, it is clear that high-throughput satellites are significantly reducing costs by an order of magnitude. However, to maximize bandwidth efficiency, the access scheme must be taken into account. We see that the sharing of bandwidth in the upload direction, in addition to the download direction, is key to an economically viable solution. Now, for the sake of time, I won't go into an actual cost example, but I did go through the numbers that show a cost reduction from the unfeasible cost of $60 million down to $600,000. Please do let us know if you would like to discuss this further or see such an example. And one more point to summarize here, the good news is that the traffic pattern of 3G LTE networks is bursty, which is what lends itself to the TDM-TDMA bandwidth sharing access scheme. We have now one challenge left to address in this webinar, and this is the CAPEX challenge, the capital expenditures. This is particularly relevant to small communities where the old expensive technology is not a good fit. The high infrastructure costs can now be addressed with new solutions. It's especially important due to government universal service obligations, also known as USO. You can see now on slide 25 a traditional expensive macro cell on the left compared to Gilat's low-cost small cell solution on the right, which we are calling CellEdge. In the picture on the right, you can see the CellEdge solution. It is an outdoor small cell on top of a light pole. We do believe that CellEdge is indeed a game-changing solution, and I will discuss later on an example of its implementation in Brazil. Low capital expenditure is achieved with CellEdge by using a fully outdoor small cell that doesn't require the cost of a shelter or the cost of air conditioning. Also, I'd like to note that the small cell is lightweight, therefore a low-cost pole or light tower is sufficient, again reducing the CAPEX. And in addition, the deployment is low cost due to satellite backhauling. But before I end the slide, not less important is the fact that CellEdge is an integrated and optimized full solution of the small cell and the backhaul. And one more point I want to stress, and this is that Gilat's ability to perform the full turnkey projects in days anywhere has been proven. On the next slide, slide 27, we see here the CellEdge small cell, that it's easy to install and it has a solar power option. You can see the specs for yourselves in front of you. It has low power consumption and high transmission power. Its high capacity is up to 24 concurrent calls, and the high speed is due to the HSPA Plus support. The other part of the CellEdge solution that I mentioned before is the satellite backhaul, and it has advantages as well, and we discussed many of those earlier, with specific optimization for voice and data compression, and including, of course, the performance acceleration. On the next slide, I want to stress that Gilat's differentiator with CellEdge is in fact the fact that it is a fully integrated system. CellEdge is an optimized solution from Gilat that ensures an enhanced user experience, and we are offering the small cell itself integrated with a backhaul solution. Both parts are coming from Gilat, and full turnkey solutions are possible, as you will hear shortly. Now I'd like to share with you two examples coming from the field. First is an implementation in Brazil where the time to deploy was critical. The 3G network was deployed under Anatel obligation in 2 states in Brazil. I haven't been there, but I did hear stories of the complexity of bringing communication to the jungles of Brazil. Here, Gilat performed a turnkey project in record time. 20 sites were deployed in 2 months. This included the site survey, the equipment, the installation, and the activation. And from this successful story, we've coined the term, "Tell us where you want it and we'll make it happen." You can see here some of the pictures taken on site. I'd also like to mention that the maximum throughput on the 3G network was achieved with the acceleration techniques that I covered earlier. So I'd like to sum up this case study with 3 main points that we're hearing from our customer on why CellEdge was chosen. It was chosen, 1, because it was the most economical solution requiring minimal CAPEX. It was the fastest to deploy. And the third point was the feasible maintenance. There was no need for highly qualified engineers on site. We have recently announced this in a press release. Please see here on this slide. The full press release is here the link is here on the bottom of the slide. This phenomenal story was with our customer TIM in Brazil. TIM is the 2nd largest Brazilian operator and the leading company in the prepaid segment. Gilat deploys 3G small cell network for TIM Brazil in only 2 months. That's the title of the press release. This coverage was achieved with CellEdge. This is our innovative solution that I described earlier that integrates a small cell together with our backhaul. And I'd like to share with you here the quote from our customer, Marco Di Costanzo, the director of TIM's mobile network. He's quoted here saying, "TIM was required to provide 3G connectivity to some of Brazil's most remote areas." He then continued, "When we learned about Gilat's unique CellEdge solution, coupled with their outstanding capabilities in rural areas, we were confident that they would deliver the turnkey project on spec and on time, and indeed they did." Some testimonial, what you say. Now I'm moving on to another example. This is here of the LTE network in Asia. Here, a Tier 1 operator in Asia, whom I can't mention their name unfortunately, had to demonstrate achieving the maximum speed of a handheld device in an LTE network over a high-throughput satellite backhaul. This success of accelerated and encrypted performance was achieved with SkyEdge 2C Capricorn that I mentioned earlier during the webinar. I would like to just emphasize again that the handheld device maximum performance of 100 megabits per second was achieved in a single session FTP download. I also want to add that the demonstration took place over an LTE network with successful integration with 2 different eNode B manufacturers. This achievement as well was published most recently in a press release. You can see again here the link below at the bottom of the slide pointing to the full announcement. I'd like to share with you the quote of Erez Antebi, Gilat CEO, in this press release. He said, "Our 200 megabits per second Capricorn VSAT solution, which combines 4G data acceleration and encryption over GTP, is an important industry milestone." He then continues, "In the trial, we successfully demonstrated our ability to overcome the satellite delay and proved that LTE handheld devices can reach their maximum potential speed." Also a very impressive story that we've recently announced. So to summarize this presentation webinar, let's see what we've done. Jose del Rosario from NSR has gone over the trends that are causing rapid migration to 3G LTE networks. This migration is setting growth opportunities for MNOs. However, real challenges of performance and cost need to be addressed. I have then discussed how Gilat is overcoming these performance and cost challenges with 2 unique offerings. First, the CellEdge to C Capricorn, the fastest TDMA VSAT, enabling maximum handset performance in LTE networks. And 2, CellEdge, the integrated small cell over satellite, enabling affordable, quick deployment anywhere. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have some time now for questions. However, please don't hesitate to approach us after the webinar with additional questions and necessary clarifications. Now, please just give me a minute. Okay, let's see here. The first question. Can we be sure that Gilat technology is a good long-term investment? What is your differentiation? Okay, I will take that. I have discussed several points that we strongly believe position Gilat as a key player. I want to clarify that MNOs today in different regions have different needs. Our high-performance Capricorn solution is an opportunity for MNOs in the developed world to quickly deploy an LTE network before their competitors. This deployment can enable the MNOs to gain market share ahead of their competition. And Gilat's 200 megabits per second TDMA VSAT is indeed unique in the industry. It is not only unique in achieving the maximum LTE speeds over satellite, but it also uses the only feasible access scheme, namely TDM-TDMA. I would like to share with you a few more points. First, that Gilat's unique acceleration techniques that were used for the recent achievements that I discussed during the webinar are currently patent pending. Also, I want to tell you that Capricorn was designed to support the latest high-throughput satellites, namely HDS, and it was built to be future-ready and was therefore based on a multi-core ARM processor. This enables Capricorn's performance leadership, making it suitable for high-bandwidth enterprise applications of various kinds, such as oil and gas in addition to cellular backhauling. The second differentiator that also I mentioned during the webinar is our integrated and optimized small cell solution over satellite. This tight integration between the cell and the backhaul that Gilat has done ensures that CellEdge delivers the required performance, low power, and enhanced user experience. And all this while making efficient use of the satellite space segment. Now, this solution is appropriate for rural areas, where often fast deployment of 2G or 3G network is required due to regulatory reasons. Gilat has the expertise in this environment to deliver full turnkey projects in record time. So in summary, you can rest assured that our systems are future ready, supporting HTS and high throughput networks, and that we will indeed be a good long-term investment for you and your customers. Okay, I think I've answered that at length. Let's see another question. Do you expect 3G, 4G deployments worldwide? Please, Mr. Del Rosario from NSR, can you take this question?
Sure, and thank you for the question. A good one. I think from our point of view, with the need for performance to support 3G, 4G and high bandwidth requirements, and also the challenge of lower total cost of ownership, and then the advantage of fast deployment, we believe that the market is opening up to satellite backhaul with 3G LTE networks in many of the regions with pent-up demand, notably in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, countries that are considered either developing or emerging markets. I think the example of Brazil that Ms. Oren had pointed out really points to the fact that developing and emerging markets are key in terms of global implementations. But having said that, we also, in looking at the expansion of markets, we believe that developed country markets with large and growing requirements for digital divide programs or even USO provisions are also expected to contribute to demand for countries that include Australia, Japan, and even North America, the US. There was a recent speech by the FCC saying that the digital divide in the US has not been bridged in terms of the gap, so here there are opportunities as well for wireless backhaul. So in summary, it's both emerging markets and the developed country markets that are going to be targeted in the future.
Thank you very much. Let me take one more question. Just a minute, please. What are the primary inhibitors of satellite adoption in 3G, 4G networks? Can Gilat overcome them? Okay. I must say absolutely yes. Gilat has proven that we can overcome some of the most difficult challenges for satellite communication in 3G LTE networks. So let's review them. First, the cost is perceived as a primary inhibitor for satellite adoption. This topic, though, is now being addressed by the growing abundance of high-throughput satellites. Cost is already declining and expected to decline by an order of magnitude. But don't forget that on top of this, it is important that the correct VSAT implementation be done. As I explained earlier, Gilat's TDM/TDMA VSAT ensures that bandwidth sharing is done in the download as well as the upload direction. So if I may add, if this is not done, the solution would not be feasible for 3G, 4G networks that want to reach their maximum potential. Another inhibitor to adoption that is being addressed by Gilat is performance. And again, as I mentioned earlier, Gilat has demonstrated that it is now possible to achieve this required user experience over satellite that matches terrestrial performance. I also want to stress that Gilat also provides the needed security with embedded encryption. Now, for those of you who are not from the satellite industry, I want to add another key advantage of satellite backhauling for 3G LTE networks, and this is the speed of deployment. With satellite backhauling, a site can be up and running within a day, and this is with 5 nines reliability. Truly a point to consider when time to market is key. Okay, I'd like to conclude with that and urge you to keep in touch. We are here to hear you. I would like to thank our guest, Mr. Del Rosario from NSR, and of course I would like to thank you all for attending. As I mentioned, the webinar is being recorded and will be available shortly on our website. Please enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are stationed in the world. This concludes the webinar. Thank you.